everyone. Hope doing great this Wednesday evening. I just thought I'd do a little bit about a 15-minute video about what's going on, but not so much about the MOU that everybody's talking about, but ladies and gentlemen, its impact on Saudi Arabia. But before I do, hold a moment. Let me put this thing on a mute. Sorry about that. I've been getting texts all day. But before I do, let me just tell you something. First of all, I want to thank you so much for all those who have subscribed, for all your comments. Believe me, I read every single one, and I apologize if I don't get them back. And number two, thank you for those who have, decided to take my 6 weeks course. Remember, you have till I guess next Thursday to sign up. It's a very limited course. And just remember, for those who have signed up or planning to sign up, please bear this in mind. This is an intellectually open class. It's not necessarily political correctness, but it gives you a different perspective than the traditional Western Eurocentric world. And you have to be involved. It's a give and take. Yes, I speak 70% of the time, but it's interactive. So just want to let you know, and whatever you do, have a sense of humor. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have all been swamped about the MOU, the Iranians coming in, the Iranians walking out in Switzerland, the Iranian coming back, and the United States giving away so-called $300 billion, which we did not give away $300 billion, ladies and gentlemen. But all of this, from my perspective, it's a show. As I said before, for the past 6 months, and I wrote in my articles even before the war started, the day that United States went to this war was the day that it lost it. Lost this war. Sorry, let me fix that, because obviously that's a picture of Mary Magdalene. Some people may get offended because she's a little bit nude. And so let me apologize for that. Because United States entered into a war of attrition, not just economic, but also military and political. And in all three, it has lost, correct? United States finds itself, as we said it would, in around just before the war started. And I said it again in March, and I said it again in end of March, in a situation where it finds itself in two options. Option number one, stay in and go flat ass broke, right? Because we can't afford it. This war is costing $1.5 billion a day, not 29 billion. We spent probably 20 billion just of all the weapons we lost. Or get the hell out of Dodge, keep its economy, but get political flack for it, which it would appear that way. It has also lost militarily, ladies and gentlemen, because contrary to popular belief, we did get our ass kicked within the first 2.5 weeks. The so-called incredible Armada, which is a magnificent 20th century navy designed for the blue waters of Persian Gulf, couldn't match and cannot match a 21st century modern world of the green waters of the Persian Gulf. So, in addition to the navy, obviously, from the air we have lost, the fact that the Iranians were able to wipe away literally 1/3 of our entire worldwide TAD system, our AWACS, overall over 40 various types of planes and aircrafts, send the message that the jig was up. I think the president of the United States realizes that. And I think when people say, we can win, we have the greatest military, they are either lying through their teeth, or they absolutely do not know, because you cannot win a war that you don't have the military capability, the political tech capability, and certainly the financial capability. But that, ladies and gentlemen, ironically, is not what I'm going to talk about. What I'm going to talk about, as I have said before, the impact of it in the Arab world. Remember, for I would say half a century, right? What we saw as the Middle East, right? I like to call it's the Arab, American Israeli war region, or the American Israeli Arab region. But what we see now is that has shifted, that the so-called Eurocentric Western system that relied on Arab Israel to maintain a system, it's gone. And I've been saying that for a number of years now. And those who have followed me or taken my classes or read my articles and such knew that. Now it's an Asiatic global led order, where Asiatic Islamic world decides how that region is going. So whether it is PAC, which is Pakistan, Iran, China, right? Or I should say SIP, China, Iran, Pakistan, or whether it's TIIM, Turkey, Iran, Indonesia, Malaysia, they were all under the auspices of the Chinese, Iranian, Russian alliance, signaling that is a new world happening in this region. And it is something that the United States recognizes. We can go up, you can go down, we can go left, you can right, you could scream whatever you want. The jig is up for us all. We realize that, but very few countries in that region is going to feel the impact as much as Bahrain, which we discussed before, is pretty much right. Jordan, as we discussed in my article, and we did a video recently about the eventual removal of King Abdullah, not the Hashemite kingdom, most likely King Abdullah, and probably the replacement with his half brother Prince Hamza. And in this case, Saudi Arabia, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what we're going to discuss today, the impact of MOU. Remember, Saudi Arabia, to go back, ladies and gentlemen, it's a nation of tribes. But the founder of Saud came in, put all the tribes together, but that tribe was based on a very unique and ancient covenant that the tribes who, whether it was the Hawitat or the Shamar or the Tayyib or the Harb, north, south, east, west, did not matter, would have economic protection, would have political protection, will have military protection. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, the king would provide absolute support and for all that protection, and the tribes would give him absolute loyalty, right? Perfect relationship. Well, that kind of changed with the MBS. What happened was, even though MBS did the coup, no problem, he was there, that began to be shifted as MBS not only confused modernization with westernization, right? Bringing, I don't know, nightclubs, loud music, fashion show 100 miles from Mecca, which is the holiest site in the Islamic kingdoms around the world, right? It began also to take steps that, even though it pretended it didn't deal with Israel, but everybody knew it was joining Israel. It was joining in numerous times in coup attempts against Iran, in not defending the Palestinians. So by the time you had the United States and Israel attacking Iran, the concept of MBS betraying, its populace, betraying the covenant was also there, because throughout these things that was going on, MBS was also trying to cement its power as a total dictator, which is not basically what the tribal system is. And he tried to do that by bringing Western companies, trying to run the electricity, the water, try to, shall we say, 21st century militarize the military. But again, this is an ancient land. This is an ancient culture that goes back thousands of years, even prior to the arrival. So when the war started, there were a lot of people pissed off at MBS. But what happened when the United States attacked, and we do now, the Saudis did play a role, whether it was directly supporting United States or indirectly, the Iranians hit, and they hit hard, 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 hard. But they didn't just hit militarily, they hit economically as well. Remember, the covenant is based on military protection and economic protection. Well, the military protection was gone. Why? Because the Iranians were able to come in and what? Hundreds of billions of dollars of equipment that was spent in the past 40, 50 years were worthless. The Iranian came in with $20,000 missiles, were able to destroy a $350 million TAD system, to blow up planes, to take out AWACS, right? So the covenant pulled back, and what they saw was now they're under attack. And when the Iranians came in and said, okay, no Strait of Hormuz, well, there goes the money. So now you have these tribes and the populace going, we got no money. Our military is worthless because obviously the Iranians are kicking the ass of the bases. What are we to do? Well, they did something very interesting. Since the covenant was broken, they stepped back and they hit MBS hard. And by that, I mean, remember, Saudi Arabia is a tribal society. That entire structure is tribal. So, where there's the military, which is three different parts, which is the army, the Saudi Arabian National Army, SANG, which is mostly tribal, the regular army, mostly tribal, or the security forces separate. Between the armies, between the system, these are largely controlled or influenced or run by the sons of these tribes. So these tribes did three important things. Number one, they began to hurt the United States and its allies and its Israel indirectly, militarily, and economically. And remember what we talked about 4 months ago, that these tribes began to control the roads, the same roads that the United States needed to get its supplies. And as a result, within the first few weeks in a month, within the first month or more, United States no longer had access to the road because the tribe of, let's say, I don't know, Hawitat or the Shamar that were controlling the borders were not allowing the goods to go to the United States. Remember, when the United States wants to bring supplies to its bases, some of the things like electricity and water is sustained, but food, security, all of these things are brought in lots of times, either by air or obviously by port or coming through the UAE border. But then it's not an American that's driving those trucks or, but it is the tribes that drive those things gets to the goods. So by allowing who gets through and who doesn't get through, these tribes, north, south, east, west, made sure that the United States access to these bases was extremely limited. So when you include being damaged, you can imagine why the war cost so much. Because by the second month of the war, United States had to literally bring everything in by air. So you can imagine the cost, and it's more than $29 billion. So they did that. But then they also did two other things, right? What did they do? The electricity, the garbage collection, the social structure, the water. You may have the top enchalant being from the House of Saud, being from a pro Saud tribe, and you may have French company or the Spaniard company or the Israeli, even though they're not supposed to be running. But the mid level and the low level are from there, from the tribes, whether it's the Hawitat, whether it's the Shah, whether it's the Utaya, whether it's all of these tribes, all of a sudden the electricity came slower, the water came slower, the garbage came slower. So what could MBS do? Sending the National Guard to go in and stop these tribal people. But he couldn't because the National Guard all of a sudden saw, whoops, there's my uncle at the border saying, don't come in. So they had to step to the side. They had to send the army. Oops, there's the army. Let me see. What do I see? Oh no, it's my third cousin twice removed. They couldn't do anything. So what the tribes did basically told their kin in this security, whether it's military, whether it's police, whatever it was, not to necessarily stand down or do a coup, but to look the other way or just do a passive stand. They're not going to arrest their families. So now there's a massive difference. Yes, you have the a security team, which is about 25,000. Yes, you have the Royal Guard, but you can't run Saudi Arabia by these Royal Guards. You need those military, the 115,000, who about 50% of them are from the tribes that are protesting. But they did something else as well. They went to the mosques for the first time for the past 3 months. I should say 3 months ago. The names of MBS was not said in these mosques. Now, you have the state mosques, the big ones in Mecca and Medina, they're there. But the smaller mosques, the medium mosques, it wasn't said. So when the government went in and sent the police or sent the National Army to arrest these clerics, they couldn't because the clerics are from the same tribe where the armies are from. So now you have this system in Saudi Arabia. MBS sees himself. The tribes have risen up against him. The military is in a quiet revolt by not listening. No money is coming in. He is being humiliated by the Iranians, who, by the way, accusing him of handing in, helping United States. And if none of this was alive, the President of the United States, between the memory of our understanding, which includes pretty much the U.S. leaving. One way or another, the U.S. has to leave because it cannot have, doesn't have the military or the economic ability to stay. So MBS finds himself in a situation in which he's all alone. He really doesn't have that tribes. And contrary to popular Western analysts that he has a full hand on security, that he could do a coup, this is not 2017 or so. In 2017, he had the tribes because he had the money to buy those tribes. He doesn't have the money anymore. He had the young people. He doesn't have those young people because those some young people now see the country being attacked because of him and because of his relationship to Israel, even though supposedly doesn't exist, right? So he doesn't have that. But more importantly, he does not have the president of the United States. President Trump cannot hold on to MBS while his own economy or his own political conditions are in dire. So he finds himself all alone, right? Now, does that mean MBS is going to be overthrown tomorrow? Absolutely not. Does that mean the House of Saud is going to leave? Oh, absolutely not. What I'm saying is that what the memory of understanding has done, and the eventual realization, but every Arab leader, every person non-Arab in the Islamic world, is that the jig is up, and the umbrella of American influence, it's pretty much gone, and a new Asiatic-led Islamic order is emerging in the region. And for MBS, that's a massive problem for two reasons. Number one, his father. So even though no one has really seen the father and no one cares for MBS, they really are not going to touch MBS until the old man goes. But the question becomes, what happens when his father leaves? Like, right, passes away. The tribal protection that's granted to him under his father's name, as long as the father is alive, is gone. So, number two, blood demands blood. Those tribes, those people who he tortured, who he killed, whether it's from the Ben Nayef family, whether it's from the other tribes, even his own mother's tribe, right? They're not gone. They demand a justice. And given that MBS doesn't have, there's a split within the military, there's no money coming in, there's massive anger in Saudi Arabia, maybe a certain group in the capital who want the party life, who have the life scene, but that's a small group in the capital, not the clergy outside, not the more rural areas outside, who see their country becoming Western, not retaining its ancient social traditions. They are not on his side. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what's important for United States. Because United States, at the end of the day, saw its military, shall we say, hegemony be completely wiped out, whether we like it or not, or at the very least significantly, because the spider webs of these bases we have is gone. The fact that our military, our naval military, the Great Armada, could only, who basically sunk with a missile 1,000 miles away, the Iranian ship, right? It was an underwater missile, the Iranian submarine, at most, because it can't go into the Persian Gulf because it will be crucified by all the missiles underwater, but all the missiles above the water and mines and everything else, tells the person and the people around the world that our military cannot fight Iran. Not because they will not get a beating as well. They will get a beating as well. But if they fall from the second floor. If we fall from the 12th floor. And most likely the second floor can survive, but the 12th floor won't. And so, from a tribal perspective, from the regional perspective, it is for many, certainly from the global south perspective, the intelligence, obviously the think tanks and such, the time is running out for MBS. Again, not the House of Saud. We are talking about MBS. And so the question becomes, if he goes, whenever it is, 6 months from now, 5 months from now, or even a year from now, who would take over? Well, the names basically coming out is Prince Ahmed, if I'm not mistaken, I have coming in saying he's the one. Remember, he was head of the army per se, has a lot of friends in the intelligence department. They say he's the one. But let's see. But the reality is, with the memory of sorry, not memory, volume of understanding, it has become clear to everyone, including the House of Saud, including the Hashemite kingdom, that the jig is up. Despite all the hoopla, the United States has no choice but to leave Middle East. It has absolutely no choice, economically, militarily, or even politically. And one way or another, when they do, that American umbrella that protected these nations are pretty much gone. So it will be seen extremely interesting to see how long MBS will be in power. 6 months, 9 months, maximum a year. Let's see. But the time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And there's just one more thing, ladies and gentlemen, to remember, to just to throw it in there. When the Iranians, um, very much like Jordan, when the Iranians were doing massive damage to our military, they had this incredible missile system in which now we realize from that F-15 pilot that when he did an interview, he said Iranians had missiles look like alien. I'm not going to use the word. And the American intelligence says, no, that can't be. You're hallucinating. But it's like, no, no, I'm not hallucinating anything. What's important here is that the Iranians, at the end of the day, brilliant team, they have everything they wanted, but they also had help from the same tribes that MBS is now fighting. Doesn't mean those tribes are pro-Iran. It does not mean that. What those tribes helped Iran was that partially they were the only ones who stood up to United States and Israel, but also because these tribes, again, north, south, east, west, want the old covenant back. They want a covenant in which the king respected their opinion, provided economic security, provided military security, provided political security. And that covenant is broken with MBS. And it's not going to come back. So how long the fathers remain in charge, for the lack of a better term, I do not know. But there's two things history has shown: that when the old man goes, the ability of the son, who's not very popular, but more importantly, does not exercise the military or the, shall we say, the economic power that he did 10 years ago, eventually, the time is going to be up for him. So I hope that answered the question. I want to thank you so much for listening, and you have a wonderful evening. And let me know what you think. Take care.